If I could rewind back the clock, if I could go back a decade or so, I probably would never have gotten into a relationship. And you may ask me why. Here's why. See, personal development leads to better relationships. So in your 20s, you haven't fully grown into the person that you're going to become. And, not saying that once you hit a certain age, you're going to stop growing, but you need to get a sense of who you are, an understanding of who you are, the things that you like, the things that you dislike. You need to be spending your 20s becoming more self aware, finding out the things that you're passionate about, finding out, what type of career do you want to have for yourself. Your 20s are the years to set yourself up for the rest of your life. So it's the most important years of your life because your 40s, your 50s are going to be determined off of the decisions that you make in your 20s and also your early 30s. But 30s, you're starting to, move a little late, but you're never too late. But the point is, your 20s are those years where you're really supposed to be setting that foundation, becoming somewhat of the person that you want to be, or figuring out who that person is. When I was in my 20s, I was reading a lot. I had a subscription to the Wall Street Journal. I was reading that every day, alongside other books, like Elon's biography by Ashley Vance, or I was reading A Team of Rivals, which is basically a biography about Abraham Lincoln. I was trying to set myself up to become great because at an early age, I understood that greatness had a recipe. It had, a set of steps to follow in order to increase your chances of becoming great. And I understood that if I wanted to become great, then I needed to study the people that were great in the past. So I studied Malcolm X, I studied King, I studied Lincoln, I studied Frederick Douglass, Elon, Peter Thiel. I studied great people, entrepreneurs, people that were just great leaders of people. I studied them because I understood that if I could emulate what they did, I would increase my chances because I understood that, especially from Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That book really set it off for me. And not so much of the content that was in the book, but it was more of how he got to his conclusions. He interviewed some of the most influential, richest people in the world at that time. And if you would have really listened to each one of their stories, they all had similar attributes, similar traits. They did similar things that led them to greatness. So I wanted to understand what that recipe was. You know, at the same time, though, I was spending a lot of time chasing women, until I got into a relationship when I was about like 24 or so. And that relationship was, it had its ups and its downs. It was good, but it was also toxic. But I also understood that being in that relationship pulled me away from pursuing things that I was passionate about, or it pulled me away from finding interest, things that I may be interested in, because I was having to give my energy to a relationship, and giving your energy, whether it's good or bad, is draining. Even if we're having a good time and I'm spending all this time with her, it's still draining. It's still pulling me away from discovering myself, discovering who I want to be or who I want to become. So I honestly, in my 20s, I probably would have been better off if I just dated. If I dated women, messed around, I probably would have been better off, not necessarily in career wise, because I have a phenomenal career. I work in aerospace. But if I'm just saying, if I was to go back and to really think about things I would change, I probably wouldn't get into a relationship, because also while getting in a relationship, I'm in my 20s, I'm in college, I'm going to the bar every day, every weekend. Being enticed by women. I'm, a decent looking guy. I'm handsome, I would say, but I was always putting myself in trouble. So when I would go out to the bar, my girl at the time, she would also go to the bar with her friends. And it's not because she was going to the bar to have fun. No, she was going to the bar to watch me. And anytime a girl may had came up to me, she'll jump right in and be like, "How do you know him? What are you guys talking about?" So I was always putting myself in situations that would get me in trouble, mainly because I was trying to have a serious relationship while being in college. I was trying to have a serious relationship while still trying to find out the type of person that I want to be with, the type of person that I like. I'm with somebody, I like her, she's good to me, she's loyal to me. But at the time, I'm still not sure if this is the person that I want to do life with, so I'm still somewhat trying to get a feel of other women to see if they're more of a better fit for me out there, and honestly, doing all of that, chasing women or just being bogged down in a toxic relationship, it pulled so much energy out of me that could have been so much useful in other aspects of my life. I was trying to build a company at the time, trying to build a business. And well, maybe you don't know, but if you're trying to be an entrepreneur or you are an entrepreneur, like 20 hours out of your day is going to that, trying to build that company, trying to build a business plan, trying to write a business plan, trying to trying to get market validation, trying to see if your idea is even viable. So there's so much energy that goes into building a company. At the same time, I'm going to entrepreneurial events. I'm going to startup weekend. I'm trying to get into the entrepreneurial community. So there was so much energy that I needed to give to that, but I kind of restricted myself because I also had to nurture a relationship. You have to take a woman out. They want to be romance. So you got to have date nights. You have to, spend time with her at home, cuddling with her. You got to give her attention. It's just a lot for somebody who's trying to find himself, or it's a lot for somebody who's trying to build something, create something. And if you're trying to build something later down the road with an older woman, she's more understanding of what it takes to build something. But when you're dealing with a woman in her 20s, she sees it more as you being selfish and you putting everything else ahead of her. So if I could go back, I probably wouldn't get in a relationship. I probably focus on myself, becoming more self-aware, trying to figure out what it is that I want to do with my life. Even though I still figured that out, it would have came a lot quicker. And through personal development, you create better relationships for yourself later down the road. When you start to create value for yourself, you focus on school, you get out of school, you get a good job, you build a little wealth for yourself. You start to become a little bit more mature because you're growing and developing as a man, and a man doesn't fully really get mature. I would say most of us, I'm talking in generalities. I'm not gonna try to say this is applicable to all men, but for most, we reach a sense of maturity at 30. So I would never advise any man to get married until he's around 30. I wouldn't advise. I've seen too many people get married in their in their teens, 19, 20, early 20s, 22, 24. I've seen people get married at those age, and granted, some of them do last, but most of them don't. And the reason is because you're trying to marry somebody in a developmental period of your life, in a developmental stage. And you haven't fully developed mentally. So a woman that you like today, you may not like 3 years from now. Granted, that can still happen at any age, but it's more likely to happen in your 20s because you're still developing as a person. You haven't reached full development in the brain. So your decisions now, well, the decisions that you make in your early 20s, or based off of the type of woman that you choose to be with, are most likely going to change as you gradually get older and start approaching 30. When I think about the women that I was attracted to when I was like 20, 22, 23, I look at myself and be like, bro, what were you thinking? What were you thinking? Like the type of women that I like today are so different than the women that I used to be attracted to. And that's because I have fully matured and I know what I'm fully attracted to. And I know what I want out of a woman. I know what I want out of a partner. I know the type of woman that I want to do life with. And that's because I gave myself that time to develop as into a man. And not just necessarily as a man, but as a human being, because the same applies to a woman. Granted, women mature faster than us, so it's more acceptable for them to marry younger. But as a man, when we're out here still chasing other women, we're still being tempted by other women. We're going to the bar every day. We're going to the club every day. It's not suitable for a relationship. You shouldn't put yourself in situations where you're going to be tempted. Now, you should have the ability to say no, but why put yourself in a situation to have to do that? Because it only takes one time. It only takes one time. You get into an argument with your girl at home. Next thing you know, you at the bar with your boy and you're entertaining another chick or you're entertaining another man. So as an adult, as a grown man, yeah, I still go to the bar every now and then, but I don't go every weekend. I seldomly go. I go to the bar when I want to socialize, when I need to fill my social cup back up. Because to be honest, I'm more introverted than I am extroverted. So I tend to thrive in aloneness, isolation. Now, to be alone is not lonely. I'm not lonely, but I am alone. I like to be alone because I like to work on different projects. I create YouTube videos. I have to script the videos. I have to edit the videos. I want to write books. So a lot of that stuff requires my time. And it's hard to do those things when you're distracted. So I don't mind being alone. And if I have a woman, then, we have distance between her. I may see her once a week, twice a week, and, we live in our separate places. So I still have my periods of isolation, but I still am able to give her, you know, the romanticism that she needs or that she's looking for. The dates every week, at least one date a week. That should be like the standard for most men, a date a week. It doesn't need to be anything extravagant all the time. You don't need to, if a chick is looking to pull, to extrapolate a ton of money from you on these dates, then she not the one. Granted, in the beginning, you might want to try to romance her. You might want to look like that guy. So you may take her to somewhere nice, but you don't have to keep up with the facade. You don't have to keep up with the whole charade. After a while, she needs to come back down to reality and understand that we can't go to Roof Chris every weekend or every week. So I'm more mature today, though. And I know what I want to do with my life. I have a process for how I get things done. But when you're in your 20s, you're trying to figure it out. Most people are switching majors in their 20s because they're realizing that they wanted to do this their whole entire life and then figuring out that they don't want to do that anymore. You're still trying to find yourself. So I advise anybody that's in their 20s to focus on themselves. Date here and there. Take a couple of young women out, wine and dine, date a little bit, but nothing serious. Keep it casual. You don't need the extra drama, the extra toxicity that comes along with dating, and you don't need anything to be pulling from you at this moment of your life, because as I said, your 20s, you're laying your foundation to set up the rest of your life. But I hope this video helps somebody out there to realign their focus on what's important. Stop chasing women, because when you focus on building yourself as a man, creating value for yourself, you won't have to chase women, they'll chase you. Women can identify the man with resources, and that's how they choose to select men, based off of the resources that they provide: leadership, safety, the ability to provide. That's what women look for when they're in the process of selecting a man. So build value for yourself, and women will follow you. Women will chase you. You should never be in a position where you're chasing women. And I know society has told you that. Society has said that we should be chasing women because we're the chasers, but nah. When you create value for yourself, they chase you. And that's the honest truth. But I thank you guys for checking out this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it helped somebody out there. If you guys, have a difference in opinion, or you agree with something, or you just want to state something, leave a comment, man. I respond to everybody. Leave a comment. I like engagement. I like talking to you guys. I'm trying to build a community. So I want you guys to engage. I want you guys to talk to each other. So engage with me. Like the video, subscribe, so you can, be up to date when I have more content coming out and everything. Don't rely on the algorithm. Just subscribe and hit that noti bell so you'll know whenever I release something. But I thank you guys for checking out this video. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you chose to spend some time watching this, and I'm appreciative of that. But I have more videos on the way, per usual. I'll catch you guys in the next one. I'm out.